Is Friday, August 8th, 2014. This is WX Live US webinar number 122. But before we start, we're going to give Andy a little Java break and let Tim chime in.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm sure y'all have heard about it by now. It's emails have gone out and it's been mentioned a bunch of times, but the conference does begin in 78 days, 23 hours, 24 minutes, and 18 seconds. This year. It's in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Hilton Garden Inn Airport North, the week of October 27th, and there are still spots available. So go on over to the WX DevCon website and sign up. We look forward to seeing you there. That's all I have.
www.
I'll put it in the chat.
All right.
Yeah, it's www.wxcon.com.
Oh, he took over that whole thing. Okay.
Which screen you looking at?
Your scan completed. Scan completed. Just go on the very top and click the full screen to reduce it back down. Do you see it? The four arrows pointing out.
No.
Pete, do you see it?
No idea where this thing is.
Okay,
there's a link, guys, to the window procedure that I was doing all the array primer code in. You should be able to just open that up. It's not linked to any database or anything, so you should be able to just open that window.
Arnold, what screen?
Okay, you have the medias. The was open. Just minimize, close it. The screen we is your quick links.
There. Now you can see the right one then.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Go. The scan things and.
No idea what you mean by. Oh, this down here. Okay. That's why I was the heck you were talking about.
What I'm talking.
That's what I'm talking about.
Let me introduce the speaker today. He's not quite known yet, but he is his way through.
I'm trying to strive to be Halstead.
What do you mean?
Buddy?
Okay, if you guys don't recognize this, that and Andy. Okay. Okay. It's first. Go ahead and introduce your buddy.
This is a guy that I had experience to meet many years ago, and you know, we've been metal tested and scarred and had a lot of fun. And if you guys haven't figured out, if you come on the Andy show, it's even better in person.
Yeah, Pete the Grapper has grown up well over the airsoft, and I throw him new and let him have at it. Because a lot of so far done, and I didn't get to see the last session. I did we did watch the session on the right. I didn't get the session with the management that we have embarked upon over the last year or two. Has it been a year? Maybe
probably about long time, yeah.
maybe a little bit longer than that. Eyes. It goes too fast. But the management class, we kind of started off with steps and look at a article written by a gentleman that's been in and out of our chat room. His name escapes me because I've only had one cup and one sip of coffee so far. Steve, another gentleman. I can look up the article.
Hey.
Yeah, Pete Holmes. That's it. That's the guy. I wrote a deal on OOP basics in WinDev, and over because part of processing, a lot of the data processing that I do and other people have to, and the world is moving at a much more rapid pace than probably we wished it would, is cloud computing, which is nothing more than a fancy name of using a WAN system to remote into databases across the country or across the world. So the cloud computing is getting very, very, very prevalent, not to mention the mobile computing, getting into mobile devices and larger, more sophisticated web-based systems as well. So we kind of took some baby steps based upon that article and what he wrote and started building the first set of classes that you've been exposed to by Pete, along with his advances that he's done tremendously, and moving forward from there. So we've come up with something that really works fairly well. You know, occasionally we have to tweak it, but I mean, it really works nicely, and it allows us to really blast through some code to get something up and running a lot faster than what people think, especially when you get into more complicated. So I'm sure that probably Pete has gone over this a little. I'm going to give you 2 cents worth of why you should be looking at the classes and using classes versus direct access to database or in WinDev. Literally nothing wrong with the queries in WinDev. There is literally nothing wrong with direct access based on the need. What is your need? You need to look at current need. You need to look at the future of where the product is going and things like this. One of the things over the years is my wife's had a little product that she plays with all the time for trucking industry. I wrote it locally. It runs locally, so I don't need to go through all of the BS that other people go. It's a single user system, so it's direct access to the database and no problems. Quick, easy, done. But I also have a system that is run by 75 people in an environment on a web page that has in the neighborhood of, well, it's accessing 3 different web services and all kinds of things going on in there. So class-based is the fastest way that it accesses. Also got a system that is working remote databases on the cloud. So as we go through this, we have to look at what we're trying to achieve and where that is going. Because the minute you do direct access to a database, you got record locking issues. That's number one. If you go queries, then you can quickly get into a more complicated query than you may or may not be able to handle in what you're doing. Plus, you have some difficulties when it comes into updating and inserting and things like this. So the reason why I go to classes is because I have full control over everything. I can certainly utilize them to add, change, and delete records, update them. I can change the things to actually use web services to change it instead of the local database. The analysis is more of a repository of connections and data fields to the database, not as extensive of what the analysis can be. Okay, so we have total control. One of the things that 19 came out with is what they call the abstract class. I have only been playing with it now for a short time. But the idea behind an abstract class is that you cannot instantiate the class by itself into its own name and use the methods within. So, okay, you look at it, well, what the heck's the difference? I think that an abstract class, in my mind, is more of an include. These are common functions, methods, things that you use throughout all of your classes that you want to be able to not have to type over and over and over and over and over again. So by using it as an abstract, nobody can make the mistake of instantiating it, but nothing in here really drives any data. It will access whatever data is sent to it and do things with it, but nothing in here really drives any data. It is all based upon indirection or parameters or things like this. So we're kind of got to go through this abstract class. Now, as example, the abstract has certain sets of constants that we use in all of the classes, and the constants are whether we're doing an add, change, delete, view, we're going to refresh. I have some switches in here for whether we're going to do it by SQL on refresh by the record ID, which is using the H command, SQL, by using a SQL command, or whether we're going to fetch it from a web service. Whether we're going to update the file only, update by web service only, update by file and web service. And you're going to say, huh? File and web service is defined locally and using a remote at the same time in a mobile device. I can update locally the SQLite database and hold the data in case of network services, or update via SQL only, and that's a possibility if I want to do something in. Then I have an open modal, which is for a window and a quotes and a few other things. Okay. You also got a set of protected variables that you use that you have properties associated with, and you have some global public variables that we use as well. What's going to happen here is I'm working that class, and we've already put out one version out there for people to be able to download. We'll do this. I'll put out a Dropbox link for it for other people to download, and the more I get into it, the more I'll document, and the more you'll see what's going on, so you can get these. You have a connection that you can assign to this, update type, whether I want to store XML Local. Now that's going to be a future session, and I'll give you a hint on what that is, so Arnold can mark it down, and it's not next week, Arnold. Okay? I'm moving to my new house. You cannot have it next week. But store XML Local, what that was going to do is use the advantage of the serialize and deserialize to store the record either for transaction processing or undo, Control-Z. Yes, because I can actually have the system turn on XML, and what it will do is take the current record, move it to XML, move it into an array, hold it there, and then you can Control-Z back to a previous version as we go through this, which is pretty cool. The second thing is that if it is a transaction processing, then I can actually store that into the database with the user ID and password, and then I also have who's changed what as it goes through, which is pretty nice as well. Both of those are, which we'll get into. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so we go through that. We got the methods do it, and we've got the different properties for filtering, sorting the columns, table names, so we know what table we're working with, things like this. And I think that, Pete, did you go through any of the properties or anything like that?
No, the only thing I did was, structured arrays are at the basis of it.
All right.
So I didn't
So let's
into class.
Go through this. Well, let's go through this a little bit. That way we can understand what's going on. One of the premises is that you can hide or not let the developer that you're giving this to know the actual field names that you use within the class itself. So if there are certain fields here that are not exposed in the class, then they can't get to them when they instantiate the class. In order to some of those, like the inner join statement or the join field list as an example for SQL, you got to provide what they call a property. And a property is basically for a little bit of code. As an example, let's go look at the filter example. It says, okay, when I call filter string, I'm going to retrieve and pull back and give you back the field filter string. I'm going to assign a filter string. I'm going to, and all they are is a little percent. This allows you to do case as well. One of the biggest case statements here is for date and time. If you run MS, a lot of time are connected together as a time stamp. And what I use is properties to split the date and time apart from each other and go on from there, so I can utilize a separate date and a separate time. Address, combining the name, address, and phone number, or name, address, city, state as a so you can have a property that says this is my label address, and when you do that, it's back formatted as a 3x5 label. It's already set up to right on your label, and Tim has with that now, because we didn't have to with him, but it allows you to the individual data pieces instead of additional fields or through addition in your program to put things together, take them apart, how you wish. It allows you to put them here just as another in the class, which I'll show you how that works. Okay. So the properties is a cool little thing because as we go, you'll see how we use these to set up for different pieces of the data. Methods is how you actually run stuff. Okay, methods is how you go get data, bring back data, stuff like this. You can see you've got. Let me get down here to one of the methods. Fetch array index is an example. This is where I'm going to go get a particular record and bring it back to me, or a integer, or whatever I want. So this is a method. Basically, it's a procedure. It's the same thing as what you do in your global procedures, and I'll call it to return a value. What's the difference between the two? based upon what this is tied to, what class this is tied to, you can see that I'm using indirection for the array field, and I'm using the array seek for the array field to bring that back. I can use this particular method with any table or data or file that I have out there, all of them, because I use indirection to tell which one I'm using it with. So when I include this, or I've got it as part of the main class, which I'll show you in just a moment, all of this will inherit from here, and I'm quick to be able to use this anywhere I want with this. Okay, so I can use whatever I got. Same thing with the update table. I send it the table name. I've got the table name that I assigned to it, so on any screen that I've got this instantiated, I can use the table that I've assigned to it throughout. Okay? So there's several methods in here to tell it to add to the array, delete from the array, fetch a data page, which has to do with large scale deals, and the record save. One of the things that I'm sure that a lot of us has gone through is add, change, and delete, being able to add, change, and delete to our tables. This is very straightforward. I've got one place. I call it save record or rec save. And let me go to the save record, because that's really the one we need to look at first. Save record's in the other one. Okay? And what happens here is, let me open up the members class, because that's really, when you call to add, change, and delete, we call one method called save record. And all the save record does is say, okay, well, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm going to send it the record that I want. That's what this first argument is. I'm going to send it the primary ID of the record that I want. And I'm going to send it what action that they're going to run. That's A, C, or D. Add, change, or delete. I'm going to switch through the action. I'm going to say, okay, well, this is going to be a change or this is going to be a delete. Well, if it's a change, then I'm going to instantiate a new record structure. I'm going to move all of the data from a passed-in record into that record structure so we can do something with it. I'm going to do a memory to file, and what that does is that's a function that says, okay, for every field name that matches what I have in the analysis, for every field name matches the analysis, move the data from there to the analysis field. And then I go through a rec save. Rec save is what we were looking at. The rec save, all it does is the same thing. It wants to know what kind of update type I've got, which usually is going to be 0. And it's going to say, okay, I'm going to go into rec add, which goes and adds the physical record. Now it goes through the change part and it goes through the delete, and this is all based upon the action type that's coming in. So if I send add, change, or delete, I'm going to go through the switch. Now I don't have to write this but once. Simple switch, I switch it over for file web services, or I can switch it over to web service only and actually call a web service from it. I can update it on file only. And it's always by file only as default. That's what the other case is. You notice this one matches this one. Okay? Now, if there's been any questions, please pop them up here, because this is probably but we'll see it in action before it's all over with, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Rec add is another method. This is protected and it's virtual. It means I can't overwrite it, but you're not going to really call it from outside this class. Okay? And what this does is a straightforward hadd. That's what it does. The hadd brings back the primary key value and puts it into a sysid and returns it back to you. You're done. You're finished with it. And the cool part about this is that I've set this thing up also with a flag here to say whether or not I'm doing Postgres. That's what that is for. That's what the fetch next val is for. And all that does is updates the value and gets the primary key value, the next one from their auto increment. It'll also work with Oracle that way, because Oracle and Postgres uses a different index to tell what the primary field is to do auto incrementing of the record. I had to have a drink of coffee there. So, why am I going through this? Because you may want to float through this and try to figure out what's going on. But for the most part, plug it in, let it do its own thing. All you have to do is set a few switches to make it work. All of them are basically the same. You can look at rec change. It does an H modify. What are we doing here? We're taking the actual same code that you're writing inside itself and moving it into a class instead and making it generic. So that way I can call it from any window and I don't have to write the code every time. Okay? And that's really the key part, and the idea behind this is I don't have to write this every time I do something. I write in a few lines of code, and I'm off and rocking and rolling. Okay, so that kind of goes through that. Now the main class that you go through, and most of your work is all done within a class called the File Management class. The File Management class is how you run whatever file that you're going to work with. And we have right now a members file that we're working with. This class here you rename to whatever file that you wish to match up to. As you can see, I've got a members class here. That is what we're working with, is members. So I take this and I do a save as. Okay. Chris is out. So I do a save as members class, and now I have the members class here to work with. This is where we start getting into some of the differences in what we're doing between the classes. We used to have, or we still do, two separate classes. We had a record class and we had a file class. The record class managed the record itself, did everything within the record itself, and handled the entire situation. There was always a problem in the book with that. It had a lot of extra stuff in it that was duplicated in the array constant that really was useless. So you're using additional memory structure and that you probably really didn't need to use and could be used for something else. So there's a couple of streamlined things this accomplishes. By using the inherited CCS manager class in here, I have now got one instance of the rec save, one instance of all of the items we used to have in the record class. Now we all have in this one only. And everything is handled here. There's also been, it actually streamlines it. So your memory usage is reduced significantly because all you're doing in the record of or whatever fields, and that's it. Okay? Now, well, I'm kind of waffling back and forth. You could also utilize, depending upon how a lot of properties and other things that you need to use, you can use the UML structure coming out of the analysis now as your structure for this instead of the structure. We have a piece structure here. mean? Well, what you are. You can set date, name, things like this, all of that sit in there, and the links to every one of those fields are set up to assign that member record to it. In the description, the use more instead of the file access time is in the content time. You can see where I'm doing data record. That's what I'm doing there. That is the array record by variable. All of the records that I've currently pulled from the database. This is much, much faster than direct access, especially from a cloud system or a WAN or a large LAN where you've got a lot of users. Why? Because it pulls it down, their data down to the local memory. So you got their records locally on the memory, and you're saying, well, how do I keep it in sync and this, that, or the other? Well, there's a couple things. Number one is you can have, and I do it in a lot of them, is a threaded background process that wakes up every 2 or 3 minutes and goes out there and says, okay, is there any data that I don't have, and put in here, make any minor changes as necessary. But each time that you do a add, change, or delete, you go get the latest version of that record anyway. So you got the latest version of the record just the way it's been done for years. So I've assigned it to the variable, and that is all stored in memory. So it's going to be very quick. You're going to have your sorting. You're going to have your searching. You're going to have all the functionality of utilizing the memory table that WinDev provides, and works very, very nicely. Of course, then we got to assign that each one of these fields are linked to the proper field, and you see that the array record is there, and I assign each one of the fields to each one of the elements, and you're done with this. You're pretty much done there. The question is how do you handle it from there? When I come in, I need to know the record structure. I need to know what record I'm working with. And the reason I need to know what record I'm working with is so we can actually do an add, change, delete. This is the only difference between the current system one that anybody's worked with.
Andy, did you show them where fine?
Oh, I had that here
Declared?
The record was declared, or member
data.
Member data.
I don't think you showed them the of member data.
Yeah, I did right there.
Okay.
That was the last thing I did before we went to that screen. I'll tell them again. This is where I declared member data. You don't necessarily have to declare it here, but if I want it global throughout the system on member data, I do. Otherwise, you can declare it in the window itself and put that same declaration here. Member data is member class right here if you want to. Okay, so it can actually be a new instantiation and have it a totally different. Okay, let's kind of explain that just slightly. Example. I have a list of customers, okay? And pretty much the customers are the same across all the screens because I got lookups for it, things like this, things I do for the customers. But on this particular screen, I want to look for specific customers in a certain areas without messing up my original listing of customers. In other words, I don't want to reduce them. I don't want to select them more than once, things like this. I want to have a lookup of associating parent and children together as an example. Well, I can instantiate a new members class and have a completely different select statement for it and have 2 instances. I can have 2 different arrays with the same table and link them together if I wanted to. I'm going to get all into the weeds here, and that's not going to work for us. Safe to say it's like an alias on the files. I can have multiple versions of the same file at the same time if I need to. And we'll get into that in advance as we go through. We'll do some more with this. I think we need to have a complete setup on this, don't you, Arnold? Where we go through a lot of the think this work.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we do that. Anyway.
Hey, Andy, did you see the one question?
I'm digressing. I'm going left. No, I don't see any of them, Bubba.
Oh, okay. He says, I would like to know as to how data will load in controls.
That's
okay.
where Andy's at.
Yeah, this is where I'm getting into right now. And we can do certain things, and we'll show you how this works, because I don't have any data in the database, but I'm going to show you how it works on this control. And then when you actually download and run this on your own, I'll have some data in the database, so you'll actually see it physically load into the record. But I got started on this late yesterday because of everything else getting into my way, and you guys obviously are the priority when checks are flying. So the member data holds the collection of the records that we've from the database. The member record is an individual record of that collection of data. Okay? Because and I want to show you this part. You cannot use a record structure. This part cannot be inside the class. It has to be above the class. This is actually not a bad idea, because we used to try to put these things up there in the big public one all the time. But how do I get an instance of this? How do I create or know that I'm working with that record ST structure? Well, it's fairly simple. They give you the ability to call it based upon the class. If you notice that I'm not using a member's data or a member's record, I'm calling it directly from the class to say, now give me a copy of that record, or give me a copy of that structure so I can work with it. Well, that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying, okay, instantiate a copy of that record structure, and I'm going to call it member record. Now, that means that literally I can type this, hit my IntelliSense, and look, I now have every field that is in that structure to work with. I can move step by step from there. And you'll see how this plays out in the form when we call the form. So I've got this, and I said, okay, cool. I've got everything I need there. And the only thing I've got to do now at the beginning of this is literally fetch the data. Okay? So I call the one method to fetch the data and do the table display. What that does then is fills the array record. Obviously, when I have array records, or I have records in the array structure, the content by variable says, okay, display whatever's in that array to this screen or this table. And I fill it all in. So now I've got everything there. So it's showing all of my records. As an example of how that works, this is our famous or infamous Project Pro. This is all doing exactly what I'm showing you. It is pulling records in from the system from the cloud. This is not running local. This is all on the cloud, is what this is. And all it's doing is pulling from the database. Now, the cloud is an Amazon server, is what it is. Okay? So it is quite a ways away. It is nowhere near me. And that's what we're doing. So we're doing this fetch data and pulling those records down, and then we're doing the table display. All the fetch data record does is do a select from member as mem, and we're done. Nothing gets filled in. It's just give me everything is all it does. And that's all I got to do. There is no other code written on the screen. What is my goal? My goal is to have a window that only has code in it to manage the window. That's all it has. I want it to manage the window and the window only. Everything else I want to manage within the class, so that way if I have to use it on any other window, any other system, it will work the same. What does that mean also? Well, that means also that I only have to change it one place, affect all of the windows I'm working with. My maintenance is less. Maintenance in the code is what happens. So it's extremely easier to, you know, you only have one place to fart with stuff. All right? Now, there's only one thing else we got to do. We got to say, well, we got to be able to add, change, and delete records to this thing and see how that works. How do I get that record there that I listed to my screen? In other words, it's the same as this. How do I get this to display based upon which one I click? Okay. So how do I do that? Well, it's pretty simple. In here, you can go to the code view, and there is select row from the table that I'm working with. All I have to do is a record equals table. Yeah. Now, I put some balance on this thing. Because if someone clicks on a blank record, well, you're not going to have any data, so I have to do one simple thing. Actually, you can I'm sorry, empty. Now I do that. Okay? So I want to see whether it's empty or not. The table's not empty, then whatever I move to the member, that puts whatever I clicked on here into the memory record. And the way that works, and Pete found an accident once, if I remember right. Goes up the ID and then search for it in the array and bring it back.
Research.
I'm sorry?
It was by careful study.
In other words, accident. You select in the stored variable top of the array, you get a record for that. You don't get just one, you get the entire array record. And that's what we're doing. Now, I can easily go get one record if I want to. Basically, I'm saying give me the whole thing because that's what I want with. On a, you can do that on a combo box. You can do it on anything what you're dealing with variable. And if it has an array that you're listing everything from, you can basically pull the entire thing in one shot is what you can do. And that's how you get your array. So the next step is how do I utilize this? How do I get to it be an add, change, and delete? Well, I'm going to show you this real quick, but we're going to have another session. It cannot be next week. I'm moving. Okay? Now that that's out in public, I won't get a Arnold. Okay? We've created a couple of templates that I have done the add, change, and delete with and the save, cancel with. Okay? These two templates handle everything dealing with the two. Okay? They have all of the procedures with indirection, using indirection, to handle the pre-record, post-record, add to record, same thing with the delete, pre-post, and delete, and update, add, change, and delete. So if I need to add a record, it's going to come in there and use, it's going to use execute, it's going to use the controls, whatever's necessary, indirection, to actually do everything necessary for you to add, change, or delete to the classes, so I don't have to write all this code every time in the buttons. I don't have to write it every time in the buttons at all. Okay? This allows me some flexibility because, again, there's just a few fields that I have to deal with. And it makes it real easy. So as far as in the screen is concerned, if I'm looking at the buttons based upon everything I'm doing, all I got to do is tell it I'm working with the member data, I'm working with the member record, the class, the record class. That's what I messed up on. Okay. The form name that I'm calling, whether I'm opening it up as a sister or a modal, and what primary field that I'm working. That's all I fill in. Once I fill those in, everything else works with it. And now my form all works nice and happy. The add, change, and delete on the form, same thing. We put in code there, and it has what file class I'm working with, what record class I'm working with, and what is my primary field name. That's all it does. Okay? So, let's pop up questions now because we're going to have to go to phase 2 on another session in a week or two, probably in my new office. And we'll go through this further. Let's go have about a 10-minute question and answer bit.
You got your other screen available?
I'm trying
where
to
you can pull up that. Yeah, right there.
Okay. All right. So it's got. Let me move this out.
No, okay. Top right. On the top right, there's that.
Exit full screen. Okay, I got
arrows.
it. All right, got it. Okay.
Type in your questions there, or
from Yogi, will it be possible to validate data in a window from a class? Absolutely. I do it all the time. Once you've got it over there, Yogi, you can utilize validation. Now, there's a couple of schools of thought with that. And I'll put up that article as well. In the OOP Basics, he puts all of his validations inside of the class for every one of the fields. I think that some of that is absolutely a good idea. Okay. Some of it we didn't. Pete and Pete came up with the business rules class based upon some deals, and we do a lot of soft validations for that as well. So you can actually have requirements based upon the window fairly easily, and every bit of this stuff can be overrode. So you can change it if you want to. In fact, there's sometimes I disconnect and use my own add, change, delete buttons and hand code it. What this is the basics to get you through 99% of the windows, not 100. Okay, it's basically what it is. Because, we can all say that we can the off. Okay? And I got calling, guys. I'm going to have to. Just a second.
By the way, if you guys can't see the attendee list or the chat, go to the top right corner of your window and hit the 4 arrows pointing forward, and that will take you out of full screen mode. Okay, we got some
Just a
typing.
second, guys.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you use the business Pete did, when you refer to these fields, do you refer to not the table but to the member array?
The member record field. See, you're dealing with whatever's currently in memory in that record. So the member record, or the the instantiation of the record itself, you're going to be referring to. Let me get there. You're going to be referring to whatever you instantiated here. See what I'm saying? You're saying when I'm looking at validating what I put into that record, member record, I'm going to be looking at that right there. In other words, if member record member name equals return to capture. Okay.
Exactly.
That's what you're going to be doing right there. Okay. So you reference that directly is what you do. Now, the thing about it is I can actually have a member record there, and I can have parent record is member class. So I can have two instances of that same structure and have two totally different records in there. Okay?
Yeah, that beats in Clarion where
yeah,
you have to
this
do,
is the smart way to do aliases.
Right.
That's right.
You don't have to define it ahead of time.
Now, I wished, okay, they do have a new deal here. Like this, okay? But you can't use that in classes yet. I turned it in as a problem, and hopefully they'll fix it. Why do I do that? Is because if I look at parent record, and look at it now, you can see I've got, the fields, certain fields from that member in there, okay? But member record has all of them. The problem that I ran into with it is that I would like to be able to put, the record is member up there inside the class. I don't have to retype all of the fields again. In essence, I don't have to do that. But it does not work when I instantiate the class. So that's the only problem I ran into. Just kind of goofy. Well, that's kind of go
So
off.
Jack says, okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
All right. I've got a couple things to do with this, okay, before I post it up, and then I'll post up to Arnold a Dropbox to be able to download the whole thing, okay? And it will work when you download, so you'll be able to add people to it, delete people, change their names, things like that. It'll just be a basic, and what we'll do as we go forward, we will add more tables to this. We will do some lookups. We'll show you how to do some more and more of the advanced stuff as we move through this, okay? And that way you can work it. Yes, I plan to, Yogi. It's going to have the compiled version as well as the edited, as well as the project. It'll have the whole thing. Okay, and you'll be able to see how it works. That's not bad. Anyway, all right. I've got three people hollering.
Pretty good today.
I'm sorry, guys, but sometimes I get busier than one-arm paper hanger, and this is one of them. Must be Friday. It must be the 5th Monday of this week.
You go hang paper. You go hang paper now. Hey, bro, we're not a webinar next week anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm
check with me. I am moving
so
houses to. Check with me if I got time. You know, it's all going to be jumbled for a while. Yeah. Yeah. We can make Pete do it again.
Yeah. If not, Steve said he has something, and
y'all
Pete always goes
good
at
at
the
it.
other. So we'll see who goes next.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been busy.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
That in a while. Take care, man. Thanks so much, Andy. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.